Hey everybody, it's Four Wheeler Doctor again. I got another one here. Old 300 Fourtrax. Came in for no spark. Hadn't been run in a number of years. Got to checking around. Had a new coil on it already. Come to find out it was the CDI box was bad. Replaced that. Got it sparking. Got it running good. Adjusted the valves on it. Cleaned the carburetor. The back brakes were bad, so I ended up putting a new set of brake shoes on it, and finally got it to where I could ride it. Rode it, and it's making a roaring noise coming from the rear end. So I drained the oil out of the rear end, and it had more water in it than oil. So I'm going to pull the rear end off. I got a rebuild kit for it, so I'm going to throw that in there. It's getting kind of late tonight, so I'm probably just going to get the rear end tore off and maybe rebuild it tomorrow. So get started. I'm going to pull the tires off, get it down to where you can see it a little better, show you what I'm going to loosen up, and start tearing it apart. Alright, so got the tires off. You can kind of see what we're dealing with here. I took the cotter pins out of both sides. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but I'm pretty sure the axle has to go out that way, and you have to have the brakes taken apart so that the axle will slide out. This Diff rebuild does require some special tools. Like I said before, I'm not real big on buying them. Some people, if you have to replace your ring and pinion in your rear end, some of the kits you can get off eBay come with the nut or the socket to get the nut off of the pinion out here. I had bought one years ago and came with that socket, so I have a socket for this model. I've also made some. I can show you those when we get a little closer. I also made a socket to take these nuts off. Otherwise you have to use a monkey wrench or a big adjustable wrench, and these are fine threads. It takes forever to get these nuts loose, and sometimes they can be very, very tight. So I made a socket for that too. But as I get these hubs off, I'm gonna pull these skid plates off on the differential side as well as the brake side, and probably that brake drum and cover, and then I'll show you these sockets that I made. Alright, be right back. Alright, so I got the hubs off, got the skid plates off. Now it's time for my homemade socket. This is a, I believe it's about a 36 millimeter super deep well, and it works great for these. Put impact on it and run it right off of there. The way I made it was I took one of these off, like I said before, with a monkey wrench, which takes forever. Pipe wrench, whatever you want to call it, and got a piece of flat steel, put it in the vise, the nut with the flat steel laid against the flat side, heated up each edge and bent it over, bent it all the way around. Then I got back to the center and welded it. Just welded on the outside so it was still smooth on the inside, and my weld don't look the best, but hey, it works. Welded that to a piece of pipe, and then welded a socket on the end of the pipe, and it makes it so much quicker. You just do one nut at a time. It's got that jam nut on it, so you can see this one here actually has some Loctite on it too, so that would have made it even more fun to get off. Not with my handy dandy 1 foot deep well socket. And that's it. Do that. There's a washer in here as well. You have to get that out with a screwdriver. Do the same thing on the other side. Then I'll have to take the brake apart on the other side to get the axle to slide out, and I'll pick back up there in just a minute. Alright, so I got the nuts off both sides. Took the brake cover off this side. And now it's time for these aggravating wing nuts on these brake cables, and time for my handy dandy homemade tool. I tried to show this on another video, but it got cut off for some reason. This is just something I rigged up, and rigged up is the true word for it. It's a socket with a couple slots in it. I just had the slots in it to begin with, and the wing nut would try to slide out each side, so just kind of spurred a moment. Took a couple washers, bent them, and welded them on there, and it works like a champ. You do have to hold the cable in a lot of cases, as in this one, and it's got a slotted head on it, so you can hold it with an adjustable. Put this on there like that. And it comes right off. Yep, it works. Might be selling these in an infomercial one day. 2 easy payments of $19.99, and I could fix you up with a brake cable wing nut tool. It really saves you carpal tunnel on your hands, wrist, and all that, and makes getting these brake cables off a whole lot easier. Alright, we're back again. This is a couple days later. Got me a helper over here today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
He's acting shy right now, but he's going to do the commentating on this next little part. We're going to show how to get this differential and axle off of here. So, get over here where I can see better.
We have 4 of these nuts and a shock bolt, and then these 4 bolts. These 4 nuts.
We're going to take all those off, and we'll cut the camera back on in a second. It's just going to take us a minute to get these off.
We got the brake panel off, and then on the hitch that you have to unscrew or undrill these 4 bolts on the hitch of the 4-wheeler.
Alright, we're going to do that and come right back. You had to slide this brake panel over to get it out of there, but it's out.
We're back. I gotta tell you something. I'm sorry for telling you that there's 4 bolts. There's actually 5 on that thing, and we're gonna loosen these 4 bolts
to get the differential off of the tube. Be right back. Alright, we're back. Got these bolts loose, and what you have to do is just slide your brake panel off and slide this tube off like that. And you can see these 2 collars here. That's why you can't just slide it one way or another. You pretty much have to take all of this apart in order to get it out of the differential. And then sometimes this comes out easier than others, but you can just, there's actually an O-ring right here that makes it a little tougher to get out. I can't find a screwdriver. Okay, the little O-ring right here kind of wedges the axle in there. Slide it off, then the axle should slide right out, just like that. There you go. There's your axle, and here's your differential ready to rebuild. What we're going to do next is take these bolts out of the differential, and we'll come back in a minute.
Okay, there's a record. Hey guys, my name is Ryker. Hey guys, my name is Ryker. Now what do we do?
I don't know. You said you were going to say a few words.
This is how you take off what?
Differential bolts.
This differential bolts, and I'm about to hand it over to my helper. guys, you got all these bolts, all these 4 bolts out.
Put them in the bag.
And if you find a bag somewhere, put it in that bag. And then you won't zip that bag up. And now what? You say some stuff for
All right, we're almost got the differential loose here, or apart here. We took all the bolts out.
Let me tell you.
Okay, tell them part about the screwdriver.
Find your screwdriver and pry this part open with the screwdriver, and
There's a notch right there.
And there's a notch, and put your screwdriver in that notch, and have somebody else put their screwdriver somewhere else and pry up on it.
And then we've got it too far for a screwdriver, so we're going to stick a crowbar in it and pull it the rest of the way. Pull it down. One more time. Oh. Yeah.
Oh.
And there you go. It comes out. This is
part
the ring gear.
The ring gear.
It's pretty nasty. And one thing you want to keep up with is there will be a spacer right here. You want to keep up with that spacer. Just put it back on the ring gear. There's also one on the other side. So what we're going to do now is clean this thing up. You can see the bearings are in pretty nasty shape. They won't even spin. So we're going to clean this up, and then we'll come back and show you how to put the bearings in it.
Okay, bye camera. Bye people. What do you do?
Are you going to talk?
Welcome back, guys. We're back here. You can hear how this noise is coming from the bearing. We're gonna have to get that out.
This is on the pinion. So first we're going to get the pinion seal out. There again, I think I've showed this on a prior video. This seal puller here works great. So I'm going to stick it in, pull the seal out. It's in there pretty tight, but I got it. And let me grab a light. I'll show you down inside there. It's pretty nasty.
See that, YouTubers? I want to see down there too.
See, it's pretty nasty in there. It's mud and gunk and rust. Alright, so the next thing you have to do is there is a nut in here. I'll clean it up just a little bit before I take it out. I'll be right back. Scoot over here.
Hey guys, we're back. We're back. My name is Ryker, as you know. What are you doing? Wiping the camera?
Wiping the camera off. Okay, are you going to get up here where you can see? Stand up in your chair.
I can't. Can you hold me then?
How about stop? Okay, now we're going to pull the pinion out. You can see this, it almost looks like the inside of a socket in here. That's actually a nut you have to get out. Like I'd said before, I don't really like paying for tools, so I've made a tool to take it out before. I know that looks kind of weird, but it fits in there. I also had bought a ring and pinion one time, and it came with the tool to take it out with. So we're just going to use that. It's also staked down here in the bottom. A little notch right there. You want to try to kind of bend that up a little bit just so it doesn't rip all the threads out when it starts to back it out. Alright, if I can get my videoer to hold the camera here, I'm going to take this out. Alright, and that's what that's what the nut looks like. See, it's kind of a fine thread. Before I put these back in, I like to knock that stake spot down with a grinder just so it doesn't rip the threads back out when it goes back in. And then to get the pinion out, you can just take a screwdriver and pry right down at the bottom of the gear or the teeth, and it will usually pop right out. Let's see if we can do it here.
You're poking the guys in the face.
Oh, I'm sorry. I hope they had their safety glasses on.
You're shaking the whole entire counter.
Well, I'm sorry.
Guys, by the way, he's shaking the whole entire counter.
Alright, it's coming out. You're just going to have to take my word for it because it's going to come in kind of slow. Okay, there it goes. Alright, and then it comes out just like this. My video's not paying attention. So this is the pinion. Most of the time what happens on these is the bearing that goes on the very end here. It's a little needle bearing. It goes out. I'll show you down in there. This one still doesn't look like it's in that bad a shape, but we're going to change it. You can see that this bearing here has some wobble to it. That you can get noise from that. This is just in bad shape. It really needs some oil, be cleaned up and all that. So we're gonna get this twisted around so I can show you how to get that pinion bearing out. That's by far the hardest thing of this whole rebuild.
What?
Cut it off. All right, I'm back. Little helper's gone for now. So I got to do this video and stuff by myself now. What you do here, there's a needle bearing, like I taught in this housing right here, and they put this hole in here to get this little snap ring out. There's a small ring that the light's almost too bright to see in there, but it's very difficult to get that ring out of there. But what I normally do is take a punch, pretty sharp tip, well, I guess this would be a pick that you can hit with a hammer. This time this one wasn't too bad. I actually can just stick the pick in one side and just try to spin that ring around to get to the very end of it. And I'm not sure if you can see or not, but I've got the end of it there. I didn't slide it all the way to one side, but the ring is the end of the ring is visible. So what you do then is to take a small screwdriver, or you can take that pick, catch the edge of that ring and pull it so it bends out. Then take a pair of needle nose pliers, grab the end of the ring and pull the whole ring out at one time. I'll get it started and then I'll show you removing it with a pair of needle nose. Alright, so I've got the ring pulled out here, right to the edge of the hole. You can catch it with your with your needle nose and pull that thing out of there, just like that. If you can see the ring here, it's just a piece of metal. Right here. You can see where I bent the end of it so I could get it started to come out. So that's the hard part. Alright, so the next thing is to get this needle bearing out of here. There's no way to get to the back side of it. Actually, there's a hole in there, but you can't really press from it. So what I use is this thing called the blind bearing puller, and you put it inside here, and as you tighten it down, it will spread these fingers out and grab on to the inside of that bearing and hopefully pull it out. Sometimes what happens in this case is it pulls the needle bearings out first, and then you have to use a bigger bearing puller and pull the outer race out, but that's still the easiest way to get it out. This is just a cheap little setup I got here. I've had it for years and I've used it a bunch of times. Actually came from Harbor Freight, I believe, but it comes with a little slide hammer here, like a 2-pound slide hammer, 3-pound, something like that. It works good for this. I have a bigger slide hammer for other stuff, but it works pretty good for getting these bearings out. Let me get this thing tightened up in the vise here, and then I'll show you how to snatch it out of there. Alright, there you go. Snatch on it a little bit. It came apart just like I thought. The needle bearings came out, and I had to use a little bit bigger blind bearing puller, but this is the bearing that usually goes out in these things. So I'm going to get this cleaned up a little bit better and get ready to start putting this thing back together. Alright, next order of business is getting the bearing off of the pinion. This one was kind of stuck on there. There's got to be a better way to get this off, but this is what I've always done and it works. Get a real thick rag, clamp it in a vise, and I had to heat this one up with a little torch to get the nut to come off. But once you get the nut off, there's a collar here that the drive shaft rides on. Then you got the bearing. Then you've got another spacer right below the bearing. Don't forget that when you put this thing back together, because you have to have that in there to get your play right in your between your gears. So when this thing cools off a little bit, I'll show it to you. Okay, so I got the sleeve off of it, and I'm gonna knock the pinion out of the bearing. Just want to put the nut back on there, because you want make sure you don't want to mess the threads up on that end of that pinion. You could do this with a press, but it's just as easy to knock it out here on the vise. So that's how you get it out. Look like the inner race may have come apart too, so you can just pry that off, but do not lose that spacer that's in there. Okay, I'm ready to start putting the pinion back together. There's the spacer that I was telling you about. It goes on first, closest to the gear, and then this is our new bearing. To press this thing on there, again, you could use a press. It's just as easy to use a good vise. Tighten the clamps down to where, or the jaws down to where they hit the bearing. You want to put something on the end, so you make sure you don't damage that little stud off the end of the pinion. And ooh, about lost the camera there. I was wondering if that was going to stay up there. Get a little different perspective there. Maybe I won't knock it off when I tap this pinion down in here. Just tap it in. It's not real tough to go in there. And tap it until the sleeve presses up. Run much quieter. Also, one other thing while you got this out is take your new needle bearing, the one we pulled out earlier, and make sure it fits on here snug. It has pretty tight. It's got a little wear on it, but it's not too terribly bad. Most of these kits come with a sleeve that you can actually have this machine down and replaced over the end of this. It makes it weak. I really don't like doing that, but sometimes you don't have any other option other than buying a new pinion. So stick it in here. It actually has just a little bit of play in the needle bearing, so it's not that bad. So I'm gonna knock that bearing back in. I've done a number of these and never had a problem with it, but it is very tough, as you can imagine, to get that ring back in here. You're supposed to heat the case, freeze the bearing. It's still not enough room in there to squeeze that little snap ring in there. But the way this thing's set up, if you press that needle bearing in there and have the pinion, the other bearing, and the nut holding it down, there's no way that bearing can come out. I don't know if that's just kind of overkill to have that snap ring in there, so I don't put them back in, and I've never had a problem with one. So that's what I'm gonna keep doing, because it is very, very, very tough to get that thing put back in there. Alright, I'm gonna tap that in. Just take a a extension and a deep well socket, and you can tap that down in there until it's squared up, and then we'll be tightening in the pinion. Okay, so we got the pinion back in there. I tapped it down. It's not all the way down. I'm gonna let the nut push it the rest of the way down. Got the needle bearing in there, and also cleaned up all this, and have this whatever locking collar or whatever you want to call this thing ready to go back in. I also ground that staked spot out of it, if you can see that, just to try to keep it from messing up any of the threads as it goes in. You just want to hand thread this thing in there. Make sure you don't go cross thread it. And here's the tool again. Get it square in there. Alright, it's going down, and I'll hit that with the impact and tighten it up. Alright, so I got it tightened all the way down. It pretty much goes until it stops. You still want to go and stake that nut so it doesn't back off. And then next order of business is putting the seal back in here. It has, of all the seals in the kit, it's the one that has the metal ring in it. Looks a little odd. That seal goes in that where the output shaft goes. I'm also going to press in the bearing that goes in here. They're both appear to be the same. I'll check those and make sure. So the bearing goes in that side, and then there is a seal that goes also on that side. I'll put both of those in too before I get the ring gear out of the parts washer. I'll jump on that and come back in just a second. Alright, finally got it ready to go back together. Got new seals, new bearings in, bearing there, bearing on, well, you can't see that bearing, but there's a seal in there and a bearing. You can see that spacer that I told you about. It's you can see it wobbling back and forth. I didn't push the ring gear all the way in there so you could tell. And then this is the other spacer. I never set the backlash on these things because I usually just put them back together like they are, and don't have a problem with them. It's not like they run 100 miles an hour down the road like a car. So as long as it's got some play in it, it's usually enough for the teeth to mesh up right. And they're usually set pretty good from the factory. So I usually use the same spacers. You start getting into changing these spacers out, they're only about 20 different options of spacers, and it would take a long time to get that exactly right, but they're good enough for me. In my 13 years of doing this, I've never had one come back because of a spacer issue. So all you do is just flip this over and make sure your spacer doesn't fall out. I have to do this with two hands. Let's see if I can set this camera up. So you just take it a stand this side up so your spacer doesn't fall out. And then this does have to be clocked a certain way. There are two bolts here by the output shaft that are 14 millimeter headed. They're 10 millimeter shanks. They have to be toward the front, and then the rest of them are 8 millimeter. These are torqued down at like, I believe these are 19 foot-pounds and 36 foot-pounds, but you might want to check that. My memory is not what it used to be, but I will look it up before I do torque them back. You can just wobble this back and forth and it'll eventually go down. Really don't have to do any kind of pressing or anything like that to get it to go down on there. Let's see if I can wobble it around and get it to fit while I got it on camera here. almost all the way down. I have to tap it with a rubber hammer. You also want to make sure the seal doesn't flip out. Actually, in that case it did. So I need to push that back in and make sure that seal seats up in there right. Alright, there's everything back together. It's got a little bit of play, which is what you want. Turns fairly freely. You got all this new seals, all bearings. What I normally do is take some wheel bearing grease and go around all these rubber seals, as well as the one that goes here and the one that seals up the brake. I'm going to go ahead and throw this thing back together real quick. I might see if I can do some kind of time-lapse thing or something while I'm putting it back together. Alright, that's pretty much back in. I got to do the brake drum and cover on that right side, tighten those axle nuts up, put the skid plates on and the hubs. That's pretty much it. Anybody got any questions? Leave them in the comments below, and subscribe.